I never thought it would come to this. My life was, by all appearances, a modest success. I had a decent job as a marketing manager for a tech firm, a comfortable home in a suburban neighborhood, and a beautiful wife named Lisa. We had been married for 7 years, and while every relationship has its bumps, I genuinely believed ours was built on trust and love. But as it turned out, that foundation was more like a house of cards waiting to collapse. I started noticing changes in Lisa's behavior about 6 months ago. At first, I dismissed them. She was spending more time at work, staying late for meetings that seemed to stretch into the night. She claimed to be working on a project with her corporate ethics compliance officer, a guy named Mark. I had met him at a couple of office parties, and he seemed harmless enough. An older guy, maybe in his 40s, who talked a good game about integrity and values in the workplace. But as time went on, I began to feel a nagging sense of unease. Lisa became more secretive. Her phone, which had always been open for me to browse, was now a locked fortress. She often ran out for errands right after work and would come home late, claiming traffic was terrible. I wanted to trust her, but deep down I could feel the cracks forming. Whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she brushed me off with a wave of her hand, insisting that I was being paranoid. "You're just being insecure," she'd say, her voice dripping with that familiar condescending tone. It stung, but I tried to push those feelings aside. One evening, things took a turn I never saw coming. I had come home early from work, eager to surprise Lisa with her favorite takeout. As I walked into our living room, I noticed her phone sitting on the kitchen counter, and for a moment the temptation was too much. I picked it up, just to see if she had sent any messages. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but curiosity got the better of me. What I found was a series of messages that turned my stomach, flirty texts between Lisa and Mark. They were filled with inside jokes and plans to meet up after work. One particularly unsettling message read, "I ca. Wait to feel your hands on me again." My heart dropped. I felt like I had been punched in the gut and the world around me began to blur. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I put the phone down, my hands trembling with rage and betrayal. How could this happen? How could she do this to me? I felt my mind racing, and I knew I had to confront her. I waited, pacing back and forth, replaying every moment of our relationship in my head. I replayed her lies, her excuses, how she'd looked me in the eye while she was betraying me. When she finally walked through the door, a smile plastered on her face, I felt that rage boiling over. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm but cold, the words slipping out like daggers. She froze, her smile fading as confusion crossed her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone shifting from cheerful to guarded. I held up her phone like it was a smoking gun. This is wrong." Her eyes widened as she quickly processed the situation. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, but I wasn't having any of it. I started reading the messages aloud, watching her face drain of color. I could see the panic setting in as she tried to formulate a response. "Mark and I, we were just flirting, it wasn't serious," she exclaimed, her voice rising defensively. "It was just harmless fun." I felt a surge of anger, the kind that makes your vision go red. "Harmless? You're telling me that sex with him was harmless? You're lying, Lisa," I shouted, feeling every bit of hurt unravel. Her excuses felt like salt in the wound, each word more infuriating than the last. She stood there, caught in her web of lies, and I could see the gears turning in her mind, trying to figure out how to save her own skin. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone entirely different, a stranger who had betrayed my trust in the most intimate way possible. The confrontation spiraled into a heated argument filled with accusations and denial. I demanded to know how long it had been going on, why she felt the need to seek affection elsewhere. But all she offered were empty justifications that felt like a slap in the face. I could feel the anger shifting into something deeper, more painful. It was like a dark cloud settling over me, making it hard to breathe. I thought of our wedding vows, the promises we made to each other, and it all felt like a distant memory. As she continued to try and explain herself, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. I was done listening to the lies. I had a decision to make, one that would change everything. I needed a plan, a way to channel this pain into something productive. I had to show her that integrity isn't just a corporate buzzword, it's a way of life. I could build something new from the ashes of this betrayal. I could create a business where values weren't just on paper but lived out in every action. It would be my way of taking back control, of using my pain to fuel a new purpose. I would make integrity my competitive advantage, and I would start from scratch. But first, I had to get through this confrontation. I had to finish this round with Lisa. No matter how much it hurt, the confrontation escalated and words flew between us like arrows. Lisa was still trying to backpedal, insisting that it was just a mistake, that she hadn't meant to hurt me. I could see her eyes darting around, searching for an escape route from this mess she'd created. Each excuse felt like a fresh stab in my heart. We were just having fun, Jason. It didn't mean anything. She cried, her voice rising in desperation. Fun? You call that fun? I shot back, incredulous. You funneled your entire emotional energy into another man while I've been here, oblivious. Where's the love in that? The hurt was boiling over, mixing with a simmering rage that demanded to be unleashed. She dropped her head, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I was lonely, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You were always so busy with work, and Mark was there for me. He listened when I felt like you didn't. Her words struck me like a physical blow. The excuses had morphed into accusations against me, veiled as explanations. It felt like she was shifting the blame away from herself, trying to make me responsible for her betrayal. So you decided to solve that loneliness by sleeping with him? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. I didn't sleep with him, it was just, she faltered, realizing she couldn't spin her web of lies anymore. The truth was glaring and it was undeniable. Okay, maybe I did, she admitted, her eyes welling with tears. But it was just once. I didn't think it would lead to anything. I was confused. Her admission cut deeper than any knife. I felt the darkness gripping my chest, suffocating me as I tried to process everything. How could the woman I loved betray me so completely? I had trusted her with my heart, my home, and she had handed it off like it was nothing. The anger was palpable, but I could also feel the sorrow creeping in, threatening to drown me. I can't believe you would do this to us, I said, my voice trembling with hurt. After everything we've built together, you throw it all away for a fling. I knew this was my moment to choose my path, to either let the hurt consume me or to rise from the ashes, but right now all I felt was the pain of betrayal, and it was overwhelming. I was stupid, Jason, I know that, she pleaded, her eyes searching mine, desperately looking for some glimmer of understanding. I thought I could deal with my feelings, but it spiraled out of control. I never meant to hurt you. I felt a flicker of something in me. Was it pity? I suppressed it. No, I wouldn't let her manipulate me with tears and remorse. You never thought about me, did you? You only thought about what you wanted in that moment. I could see the realization hitting her like a freight train, but that didn't excuse her actions. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words heavy with regret, but sorry felt empty. Sorry didn't heal the wounds, it didn't erase the betrayal. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead I forced myself to breathe, to keep my composure. Do you want me to forgive you? I asked, each word feeling like a weight on my chest. Because I don't think I can, not right now. The silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. Lisa's facade of confidence crumbled, leaving only vulnerability exposed. What do we do now? She asked, her voice quivering. I don't know, I replied honestly. I had no idea how to navigate this broken road ahead. I could feel my heart cracking, but I knew I had to make a decision. Trust was shattered, and I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. As I took a few steps back, distancing myself from her, I felt something shift in me. The pain was still there, but anger began to become a catalyst for change. This was my moment. I would not let her betrayal define me. I could feel the wheels turning in my mind, plotting a new course, a way to channel this pain into something meaningful. I need time, I finally said, my voice steadier now. I need to figure things out. You've shattered everything, Lisa. I don't know if I can forgive you or if I even want to try. Her face fell, and I could see the realization hit her. I was serious. This wasn't a temporary fight, this was a turning point. You can't just walk away from us, Jason. We can fix this. She pleaded, but I was already stepping away. In that moment, I knew I needed to focus on myself, reclaim my sense of identity. I had to figure out how to move forward without her. The betrayal needed a response, and that response wouldn't come from desperate attempts to salvage a broken relationship. I spent the next few days in a haze, every moment filled with a mix of anger, confusion, and sadness. I started to think of how I could turn this betrayal into a source of strength. I wanted to create something that represented integrity and values not just as buzzwords but as the lifeblood of what I would build. But first, I had to confront the emotional storm within myself. I had to allow myself to feel the hurt, the anger, to process what Lisa's betrayal meant for my future. I began to write down my thoughts, pouring out the emotions I had kept bottled up for far too long. It became clear that this moment wasn't just about the end of my marriage, it was about reclaiming my life. I decided to meet with an old friend from college, someone who had always been an entrepreneur. I wanted to brainstorm ideas for a business built on real values, a space where integrity was more than just a corporate slogan. I wanted to show that doing the right thing could lead to success, that honesty and transparency could be a competitive advantage in a world full of deceit. As I prepared for that meeting, I felt a strange sense of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to rise from the ashes of betrayal. I would transform my pain into purpose, and that would become my new path forward. The next few days were a jumble of emotions. I went through the motions of my routine while wrestling with the new reality of my life. Lisa was still in the house, which made everything feel surreal. We moved around each other like strangers, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. I found myself avoiding her, retreating to work or spending long hours at the gym to clear my head. But no matter how much I tried, the nagging thoughts of betrayal loomed large. I finally managed to meet up with my old friend Mark, who owned a successful consulting company. We grabbed coffee at a local cafe, and I laid out everything that had happened, from Lisa's infidelity to my desire to start something new. I could see the concern etched on his face as I spoke, but I also saw the spark of interest when I mentioned my idea for a business built on integrity. People are tired of the same old corporate BS, Mark said, leaning in with enthusiasm. They want authenticity. If you can create a company where values are part of the DNA, you'll have a real competitive edge. You're onto something, Jason. His encouragement lit a fire in me. I began to sketch out a business plan on a napkin, my ideas spilling out faster than I could write. I envisioned a consultancy that would help businesses adopt ethical practices and build genuine relationships with their clients. I wanted to help companies see that integrity wasn't just good for their conscience, it was good for their bottom line. Let's brainstorm together, Mark suggested, and for the first time in days I felt a sense of purpose. We spent hours throwing ideas back and forth, fleshing out concepts and strategizing ways to market the idea. I could feel my confidence building with each passing moment. That evening I came home with a renewed sense of self. I felt lighter, like I was shedding the weight of betrayal and stepping into something new. Lisa was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and when I walked in, she looked up with a hopeful expression. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice a mix of caution and curiosity. I paused, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to share my excitement, to tell her about the plans I was forming, but the bitterness of her betrayal still lingered. I had a meeting with Mark. We talked about some business ideas, I said carefully, trying to keep my emotions in check. Business ideas, she echoed, her interest piqued. What kind? I shrugged, not wanting to divulge too much. Just something I've been thinking about. You know, helping companies with their ethics and integrity. The moment hung between us, charged with tension. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, and I honestly didn't care what she thought. I was no longer looking for her approval. I was focused on my own path now, trying to reclaim my identity after the emotional chaos she'd created. "I think that's great, Jason," she said, trying to sound supportive, but I could sense the underlying doubt in her voice. "But you need to be careful. Starting a business is a huge commitment." I met her gaze with a steady look. "I know, but it's what I want to do. I need to channel this pain into something productive." The conversation fizzled out after that, and I retreated to my bedroom, the walls suddenly feeling like a cage. I spent the night drafting a more comprehensive business plan, outlining my mission, goals, and strategies. With each word I typed, I felt a sense of clarity and resolve. I was going to turn this betrayal into a powerful motivation to create something meaningful. As weeks passed, I threw myself into my work. I reached out to potential partners and clients, sharing my vision and gathering feedback. I found that many people resonated with my ideas. They felt the same frustration with corporate dishonesty and were eager for change. Slowly but surely, a network began to form, and I could sense that I was onto something big. While I was busy cultivating my new venture, Lisa was making half-hearted attempts to reconnect. She would occasionally ask about my meetings, and I could hear the desperation in her voice when she'd say, "I want to help you with this. I want to support you." But I was hesitant to let her back in. Trust had been shattered, and while I appreciated her efforts, I wasn't ready to lean on her for support. It was during one of our more awkward evenings together that I felt a wave of nostalgia hit me. We were sitting in the living room, the TV flickering in the background while we avoided conversation. I glanced at her, and for a fleeting moment, I remembered the laughter we once shared, the dreams we had built together. But those memories quickly turned sour, tainted by the reality of her betrayal. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling day of meetings and brainstorming, I walked in feeling accomplished. I had signed on a potential client who was excited about implementing ethical practices in their company. It felt like a breakthrough, and I wanted to share it with Lisa. "Hey, I just got off the phone with a client who wants to work together," I announced, bursting with excitement. Lisa turned to me, her expression shifting from indifference to interest. "That's great, what's the plan?" As I began to explain the details, I noticed her enthusiasm wane. "That sounds complicated," she said, her tone dripping with skepticism. I felt a familiar flicker of anger rise in me. "It is complicated, Lisa, but that's the point. It's about making a real difference, something genuine." She rolled her eyes, a familiar dismissive gesture that made my blood boil. "I just think you should consider the risks. You're putting a lot on the line." I felt the weight of her comment, and it struck me. This was the same woman who had put our marriage on the line without a second thought. "You don't get to tell me what's risky, Lisa. You forfeited that right the moment you chose to cheat on me." I shot back, my voice rising. Her expression hardened, and I could see the anger flashing in her eyes. "I'm trying to help you," she snapped, and for a moment we were both standing there, our emotions raw and exposed. "Help me? You think you can help me after what you did? You can't just throw around empty promises and expect it to mean something," I exclaimed, the words tumbling out in a rush. The argument escalated from there, with both of us shouting over each other, each claim and counterclaim only deepening the chasm between us. I felt like I was reliving the worst moments of our confrontation all over again, and it was exhausting. In that moment of chaos, something in me shifted. I realized I needed to stop waiting for her to understand my pain or to validate my journey. I was no longer trying to salvage what was left of our relationship. I was focused on building my own future. As the argument reached its peak, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. I needed to clear my head. I walked around the block, letting the cool night air wash over me, and I began to think about the future I wanted. I was ready to move on from the pain, ready to embrace the strength that had started to grow within me. I knew deep down I had the power to change my narrative. I would create a life built on my own values, a life where integrity reigned supreme. I was going to make this work not just for me but for everyone who had been wronged by deceit. When I returned home, Lisa was still sulking, the tension between us palpable, but I felt different. I was no longer in a battle for her affection or validation. I had found my purpose, and I was determined to pursue it, with or without her. I was ready to build something new, something that reflected who I truly was. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself immersed in my new venture. The excitement of building something from the ground up was exhilarating, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I spent late nights drafting proposals, doing market research, and networking with businesses that had an interest in ethical practices. Every moment spent working on my consultancy felt like a step away from the hurt and betrayal, and it fueled my desire to create a different future. Lisa, on the other hand, seemed to drift further away from me. Despite her attempts to reconnect, I recognized that our relationship had fundamentally changed. I was no longer interested in the past or the memories we had shared. Instead, I was focused on the future. It was becoming clearer that while I was moving forward, she was still stuck in the shadows of her own mistakes. One evening, after a particularly productive day, I returned home buzzing with excitement. I had just secured a meeting with a well-known local business, and I wanted to share the news with Lisa. When I walked through the door, however, I found her sitting on the couch, staring at her phone with an expression that indicated she was lost in thought. "Hey, you won't believe what just happened," I said, unable to contain my enthusiasm. "I got a meeting with Jason," she interrupted, her tone suddenly serious. "We need to talk." The gravity of her voice made my heart sink. I braced myself for whatever news she had to deliver, hoping it wasn't anything too devastating. But deep down, I knew it was probably related to the growing distance between us. "What is it?" I asked cautiously, the excitement I had felt moments ago fading away. "I've been thinking about everything about us," Lisa began, her voice shaky. "I know I've messed up and I'm really sorry. I want to make things right." I felt a mix of emotions churn within me, anger, confusion, and a flicker of something else that I couldn't quite put my finger on. "And how do you plan to do that?" I asked, my tone guarded. "I want to go to couples therapy," she said, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "I think we need to work through this together. I miss you, Jason." "I miss us." Her words felt like a double-edged sword. On one hand, I appreciated her desire to seek help, but on the other, I couldn't shake the betrayal that lingered in the background. "You miss us?" I echoed incredulously. "You had your chance, Lisa. You threw it all away for a fling." I know," she pleaded, her voice rising with desperation. "But I want to fix it. I want to show you that I can change." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. The thought of therapy sounded daunting. I had been so focused on my own healing and rebuilding my life that I hadn't considered what it would mean to drag those feelings back up in a therapy room. "And what makes you think I can trust you again?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "I'll do anything," she insisted, leaning forward, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll prove to you that I'm committed to making this work. Just give me a chance. I know I've hurt you and I can't take it back, but I want to try." I felt the wall I had been building around myself start to crack. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, to give her another chance, but I was still reeling from the betrayal. "You say all the right things, Lisa, but it's going to take more than words for me to trust you again." "I know. I'm willing to put in the work," she said earnestly. "Let's go to therapy together. I'll show you I can be the partner you deserve." I took a step back, my mind racing. The thought of returning to therapy with her felt like walking back into a minefield, unsure of where the next explosion would come from. "I need time to think about this," I finally said, hoping to buy myself space to process everything. "Please, Jason," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you. I know I messed up, but I can't bear the thought of you walking away for good." I felt a pang of sadness at the vulnerability in her voice. I had once loved this woman fiercely, and the memories of happier times flashed through my mind. But the reality of her betrayal overshadowed those memories, and I knew I couldn't rush into anything without weighing the consequences. "Let me think about it, Lisa," I said softly. "I need to figure out what's best for me right now." She nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Okay, I understand. Just know that I'm here and I'm willing to fight for us." As I walked away, the weight of her words settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. It was a moment that left me feeling torn between the person I once loved and the person she had become in my eyes. I was still grappling with the betrayal, and I wasn't ready to dive back into the chaos of our relationship. In the following days, I turned my focus back to my burgeoning consultancy. I poured my energy into meetings and networking, determined to prove that integrity could be a competitive advantage in the corporate world. I found clients who were genuinely interested in reforming their practices, and the momentum felt good. I was building something real, something that was rooted in the values I believed in. But even as I focused on my work, Lisa's words echoed in my mind. The idea of therapy lingered, a constant reminder that there were unresolved emotions between us. I began to wonder if there was any possibility of healing for both of us, but the thought of vulnerability left me feeling uneasy. Then, one rainy evening, I received a message from Mark, my friend and business mentor. He wanted to introduce me to a potential client, a local nonprofit focused on community outreach and ethical business practices. It felt like an incredible opportunity, and I knew I had to make the most of it. The next day, I met Mark at a small cafe to discuss the details. He arrived with a warm smile, and as we sat down, he could see the fire in my eyes. "You're really diving headfirst into this, aren't you?" he asked, leaning in. "I feel like I'm finally finding my way," I admitted, excitement bubbling within me. "I've secured some clients, and now this nonprofit wants to collaborate. This could be huge." Mark nodded, clearly impressed. "That's fantastic, Jason. You're building something meaningful. Just remember to stay true to your values and you'll succeed." As we talked about the potential partnership, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was creating something that reflected my principles, and I was making connections with people who shared my vision. It was liberating, and for the first time in a while, I felt optimistic about the future. When I returned home that evening, however, I was greeted by a heavy atmosphere. Lisa was sitting at the dining table, her expression serious. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for yet another difficult conversation. This was going to be another pivotal moment, one that would shape the direction of our relationship moving forward. I was ready to listen, but I knew I needed to protect my heart, no matter what she had to say. As I sat down across from Lisa at the dining table, the tension in the air was palpable. Her eyes were focused, determined, and I could tell she had been thinking long and hard about what she wanted to say. I steeled myself for whatever confession or plea was about to unfold. "Jason," she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I've spent a lot of time reflecting on everything, on the mistakes I made and the hurt I caused. I know I've broken your trust and I can't change that. But I want to change, and I want to prove to you that I can be the person you deserve." I felt a swell of emotions rise within me, anger, sadness, and a flicker of hope. "Lisa, you've said that before. You said you were sorry, but it's going to take more than just words for me to believe you this time." "I know that," she replied, urgency creeping into her voice. "But I'm serious about going to therapy together. Think it could really help us work through this and figure out if there's a way to move forward." I allowed her words to sink in. Part of me wanted to brush her off, to dismiss her intentions as mere desperation. Yet another part of me was curious about the possibility of healing. My business was thriving, and I felt empowered, but the emotional weight of Lisa's betrayal still lingered in the background, like a storm cloud threatening to rain down chaos at any moment. "What do you think therapy will solve?" I asked, trying to remain composed. "We've already had our big confrontation. I just don't see how sitting in a room with a stranger will change anything." "It's not just about that," she insisted, her eyes pleading with me to understand. "It's about digging deeper into why I made those choices and how we can communicate better. I want to understand you, and I want you to understand me. I know I hurt you, Jason. I want to make it right because I love you." The sincerity in her tone hit me hard. It was the first time in a while that I felt the flicker of the old Lisa, the woman I had fallen in love with. But the shadows of betrayal loomed large, making it difficult to separate my feelings for her from the pain she had caused. "Love isn't just a word, Lisa. It's about actions. You had your chance to show me what that love looked like, and you chose to betray me," I replied, my voice wavering. "You need to understand that trust is earned, not given. It's going to take time for me to even consider this." "I get that," she said softly, "but I'm willing to put in the work. I want to show you that I can be trustworthy. I want to build something real together." I sat back, crossing my arms as I mulled over her proposal. Therapy felt like a leap into unknown territory, a gamble on a relationship that had been fractured. But the idea of healing, of truly addressing the roots of our issues, was enticing. "Okay," I said finally, surprising even myself with my willingness to entertain the idea. "Let's give therapy a shot, but I need you to understand that this isn't a quick fix." There are no guarantees. Thank you, she breathed, relief washing over her face. I really appreciate you being open to this. I'll do whatever it takes to make it work. As we finalized the plan to find a therapist, a part of me felt hopeful. There was something undeniably powerful about the idea of working together to heal. But another part of me remained distrustful. I couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her was still the same woman who had betrayed me. I had to tread carefully. The following week, we found a therapist who specialized in couples counseling. Our first session was a mix of awkwardness and tension. We sat on opposite sides of the room and I could sense the unease radiating between us. As the therapist introduced herself and explained her approach, I felt my heart race. Let's start with each of you sharing your perspective on what you hope to achieve from these sessions, she prompted, her voice calm and inviting. I glanced at Lisa, who looked nervous but determined. I just want to understand how we got to this point and see if we can rebuild what we had, she said, her voice steady. I followed her lead, but my words came out more guarded. I want to understand why this happened, but I also want to protect myself, I said. It's hard to see a path forward when trust has been shattered. The therapist nodded, taking notes as we spoke. It's completely understandable to feel that way. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it starts with honest communication. As the session progressed, something curious began to unfold. The therapist guided us through our feelings, encouraging us to express our emotions without fear of judgment. I found myself sharing my perspective more openly than I expected. I talked about how Lisa's betrayal had left me feeling vulnerable and uncertain, and how it had impacted my sense of self-worth. Lisa listened, her eyes filled with remorse. When it was her turn to speak, she opened up about her feelings of loneliness and her misguided attempts to seek validation outside our marriage. I felt like I was drowning, and instead of reaching out to you, I made the worst decision possible, she said, her voice breaking. As we went deeper into our session, I felt the walls between us starting to crumble. It was a strange and unexpected feeling to see Lisa as a person who was also hurting. It didn't erase the pain she had caused, but it slowly began to open a door I thought was long shut. After several sessions, the dynamic between us began to shift. We learned to communicate more effectively, sharing our thoughts and feelings without resorting to defensiveness. I was surprised by how much I still cared about her, despite everything that had happened. But as our relationship began to heal, another layer of complexity emerged. I was building my consultancy and gaining traction in the business world. I was meeting new clients, attending networking events, and my vision was finally coming to fruition. However, every time I shared my successes with Lisa, I felt this strange mix of pride and guilt. I wanted her to be part of my journey, but I also feared that my success would only remind her of what she had put at risk. During one of our therapy sessions, I expressed these feelings. I feel like I'm moving forward, but I'm also scared that it'll only remind Lisa of what she lost, I said, my hands clenched. The therapist nodded, guiding us through that emotional territory. It's normal to feel that conflict. As you rebuild trust, it's important to celebrate your progress while also recognizing the challenges that remain. After the session, I left feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. I had come a long way since discovering Lisa's betrayal, but I was still grappling with the reality of my feelings. I began to realize that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about forging a new path forward, one that would allow us both to grow individually and together. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to devote my energy to my consultancy while navigating the complexities of my relationship with Lisa. We were making progress, but there were still moments when the shadows of her infidelity crept back in. One evening, as we sat together, I could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "I'm really proud of you, Jason," she said softly. "You've built something amazing, and I can see how passionate you are about it." I smiled, grateful for her recognition. "Thanks, Lisa. It means a lot to me." "Do you think we can really make this work?" she asked, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I want to believe we can," I replied honestly. "But we have to keep working at it. Trust still needs to be rebuilt, and it's not going to happen overnight." "I'm committed to putting in the effort, I promise," she said, her sincerity shining through. In that moment, I knew we were both on a journey. We were learning to navigate the complexities of our relationship, finding ways to communicate honestly and openly. But even more importantly, we were learning to redefine what love meant for us, one step at a time. As I continued to build my consultancy, I felt a new sense of hope blossoming within me. I was forging a path rooted in integrity and authenticity, and I wanted to share that journey with Lisa if she was willing to join me. Together, we could face the challenges ahead, stronger than before. The past might not be easily forgotten, but it could serve as a foundation for a new beginning. I was ready to embrace that possibility. As the months progressed, I felt like Lisa and I were gradually turning a corner. Therapy had opened up lines of communication that had been sorely lacking, and I could see genuine effort on her part to rebuild our relationship. It was a slow, painful process, but every small victory felt monumental. I was learning to trust her a little more each day, and she was proving that she was committed to making amends. Every week, we sat down with our therapist, discussing our feelings and addressing issues that had previously gone unspoken. I began to feel more comfortable sharing my vulnerabilities, and I noticed that Lisa was now more open and honest about her emotions. The tension that had once filled the room during our sessions was slowly being replaced with understanding and compassion. One evening, after a particularly productive therapy session, Lisa and I went out for dinner at our favorite restaurant. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "I've realized how much I've taken for granted in our relationship. I want to appreciate you more, Jason." I looked at her, surprised by her candidness. "What do you mean?" "I've always been focused on what I needed, but I never stopped to consider what you needed from me. I see that now and I want to change that," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "You've put in so much effort to build your business and work on us, and I want to support you in every way I can." Her words filled me with warmth, but I was still cautious. "It's going to take time for me to fully trust again, Lisa. I hope you understand that." "I do," she replied, her gaze steady. "I'm willing to be patient. I know I messed up, but I believe we can get back to a good place if we keep working together." As the evening wore on, we shared stories and laughter, reminiscing about the good times we had together before everything fell apart. I realized how much I missed that connection. It was like rediscovering a part of myself that had been buried under layers of hurt and betrayal. One night, after another successful meeting with a new client, I returned home energized and filled with excitement. I had secured a contract that would help solidify my consultancy, and I couldn't wait to share the news with Lisa. When I walked in, I found her in the kitchen cooking dinner. "Hey, you won't believe what just happened," I exclaimed, bursting with enthusiasm. She turned, her face lighting up with curiosity. "What is it?" "I landed a contract with a nonprofit focused on sustainability. They loved my ideas about ethical business practices." "That's incredible," she cheered, rushing over to hug me. In that moment, I felt a rush of joy. It was the kind of genuine celebration we had so often shared during the good times, and it made me realize how far we had come. We spent the rest of the evening discussing the project and envisioning how it could grow. As I watched her excitement over my achievements, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. We were not just healing, we were growing together. It was a gradual shift, but the foundation we were rebuilding felt stronger than before. Days turned into weeks and our relationship continued to evolve. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. I glanced at Lisa, who was absorbed in the film, and I couldn't help but smile. "Hey," I said, breaking her focus. She replied, turning to me with curiosity. "I just wanted to say thank you," I said, my voice sincere, "for sticking with me through this, for putting in the effort. It means a lot." Her eyes softened. "Thank you for being willing to give me a second chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I truly appreciate it." In that moment, I felt a shift within me. I realized that while the scars of betrayal would never fully disappear, they could become a part of our story, a story of resilience, growth, and learning from our mistakes. One weekend, I decided to take a leap of faith. I planned a surprise getaway to a cozy cabin in the mountains. I wanted to create new memories together, to remind us both that love could bloom even in the wake of adversity. As we settled in for the weekend, surrounded by nature's beauty, I felt a sense of calm and clarity. While sitting on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Lisa. You know, I'm learning that integrity isn't just about business practices. It's about how we treat each other, too. Lisa nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I've realized that love means being honest and vulnerable even when it's difficult. I'm grateful we're working on this together. The weekend was filled with laughter, shared stories, and the kind of intimacy we had been missing for so long. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, layer by layer. By the time we returned home, I felt a renewed sense of hope and commitment. I realized that while the road ahead would still have its challenges, we were both willing to face them together. I had learned that love could be rebuilt, that trust could be restored, if both parties were willing to put in the effort. As I continued to grow my consultancy, I found joy in the work I was doing, but more importantly, I found fulfillment in the relationship I was forging with Lisa. It was a journey that would require constant nurturing and attention, but I was ready to embrace it all. Looking back, I realized that betrayal had forced me to confront my own values and priorities. It had propelled me toward a path of integrity and authenticity, not only in my work but in my relationships. I had learned to prioritize honesty, communication, and trust, guiding principles that would shape me for years to come. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, I felt a sense of peace. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had grown stronger through it all. I was committed to building a future grounded in integrity, both in my business and in my life, and I was hopeful for what lay ahead.